I'm joined by Talk International. It says Talk International editor Isabel Oakeshott. So anyway, you get the gist. Welcome to the show, Isabel.
Thanks. Where are we kicking off tonight then?
Well, so much to cover. You just alerted me to that Louisiana senator who just told Keir Starmer to stop taking ketamine and get the bong out of his mouth. As I said earlier, I think at last there's some kind of explanation for some of his policies, but we'll talk about that later. Let's now talk about the very serious matter of what, without a shadow of a doubt, this country is being subjected to a cover-up. A cover-up by Keir Starmer. This nonsense, you're a journalist, a very fine journalist too. You know, I've been doing this for a long, long time. We know about journalistic law. You know, there are two aspects to this. You cannot prejudice a trial by naming the charges. That's ridiculous.
Of course you can't. Of course you can't. That's like a basic thing. It's a matter of fact, isn't it? The truth is they just did not know how to handle this horror. I mean, the horror was bad enough in itself. If it had just been someone less complex, if I can put it that way, someone with a less complex family background, this would still have been an absolute nightmare for any government to deal with, leading to, rightly so, all manner of soul searching. But there were so many problems attached to this case. You know, the family's background, the Rwandan genocide, this, that and the other, the fact that truthfully, the authorities knew that he'd been referred to the PREVENT program, you know, so many landmines politically that they basically just decided to shut it all down. And it was wrong, and it did fan the flames, I think, because in that vacuum of information, people came to their own conclusions, and in many cases, they made the wrong assumptions. I'm so glad that you're showing yet again the real picture of Axel Rudakubana, genuinely looking like the devil. But the government didn't want us to see him looking like the devil. They wanted us to think that this was a cute little schoolboy who was a Welsh man. Well, was he?
What was that about? I mean, they released a picture of him as an angelic 12-year-old schoolboy. What were they thinking? They wanted us to think better of this person? Because, you see, the thing is, angelic 12-year-old picture or not, I kind of look down on people, I don't think well of people, who murder 3 little schoolgirls. They were trying to make this kid look better. Unbelievable. And here's what they should have done, right? You'll understand this. Now, on day one, Keir Starmer, the CPS and the police, they knew that ricin poison and an Al-Qaeda manual, training manual, written, by the way, by an Islamic extremist, so there's no question of no connection to terrorism, all found in his house, right? So here's what they should have done. They should have charged him on day 1 or day 2, whenever they felt they were ready to charge, with the murder of 3 children, the attempted murder of 10 other people, including 8 more children, and the possession of ricin and the possession of an Al-Qaeda manual, all at once. All at once. Keir Starmer seems to be saying that if, for example, and not that you'd ever break the law, Isabel, but if, for example, you're nicked for, I don't know, stealing something, and later on you get charged with some terrorist offence, that all other offences to your name will be prejudiced by the word terrorist. So what are we going to do then when we arrest someone for a terrorist-related offence? Does that mean that their trial is immediately prejudiced because of the word terrorism? What I'm getting at here, Isabel, is everything this idiot Prime Minister is saying doesn't make any sense at all. It has no logical cohesion to it whatsoever. It is absolute nonsense. He's gaslighting us. He didn't want to bring in terrorism because he was busy telling those far-right rioters that it was outrageous that they were spreading misinformation about terrorism. They weren't. They were actually actually on the money. It was him and the cops and the CPS spreading misinformation, saying there was no connection to terrorism. The Deputy Prime Minister at the time, Angela Rayner, actually said any suggestion of terrorism is fake news. They were lying to us.
They were, and it's outrageous. And the shutting down of political debate on legitimate aspects of this was also outrageous. And I think that there's going to be a lot of fallout still to come on that. I know a lot of MPs still have very, very hard questions to ask, and they're seeking parliamentary time to do so. This is what weak leaders and weak governments always do, ministers, when they're on the back foot. They try to rely on one of two things. Either A, I can't say anything because there's a legal process, or B, I can't say anything because I've ordered a completely pointless investigation of my own that will take months or years, and I don't want to, it would be wrong to interfere with the due process of my own commissioned investigation. It's just a way of trying to shut everything down in order to try to regain control of events and of the narrative. And, I look back at that summer of hell in the UK, those awful riots, the violence we saw, the imprisoning of people who are still serving their sentences, by the way, for foolish tweets that may, certainly have been upsetting and were improper, but didn't actually demonstrably cause anyone any physical harm in any of the cases that I'm aware of. I look back at that with sheer horror, actually. It's said about the government that the people of our country, a minority of them, had just elected, and that we're now saddled with probably for the next 4 years. Yeah,
and let's just stress that again. It wasn't the rioters who were spreading misinformation. They were saying, we think there's a terrorist connection here. They also said they thought it was a migrant. That was kind of wrong, although he was the son of migrants. But the Prime Minister knocked them down time and time again, and so did the entire government. Far right spreading misinformation. He was saying that when he absolutely knew there was a terrorist connection that he admitted only 2 days ago, finally, in that press conference, when he said, yes, terrorism was involved. Meanwhile, the Merseyside police, what's going on inside their heads? They still say there is no terrorist connection. This is a bunch of woke idiots, this sort of nonsense that we've got to get rid of. Middle-class people full of angst, terrified of being accused of racism or Islamophobia, just terrified to confront the truth. This guy was, in all probability, he's certainly a terrorist, in all probability an Islamic terrorist. There are some reports that during that 12 minutes of horror in the dance hall, he was shouting Allahu Akbar. But the Merseyside police, Isabel, still saying no terrorist connection. What planet are they on?
The reason they say that is, I've looked into this quite carefully. Under the letter of the law, and this is why Keir Starmer yesterday said that the law will have to be changed, one of the very few semi-good things that he said, you can only charge for terror if there is a, quote, clear ideology. And what the police were unable to find was some kind of unifying ideology that underpinned this nutter's actions. On the Islamic angle to it, I personally, I think that is not substantiated, or we don't know enough about
it is to an extent, Isabel, insofar as the Al-Qaeda training manual that Rudakubana had in his house was written by a renowned Islamic extremist.
Understood, but that should not have been allowed to kind of spill over into a broader anti-Muslim thing, which some people did go down that line. We know they did, and I think that was wrong. I think for me, the more interesting question is actually a broader one about immigration. And I completely acknowledge that this was not an immigrant, still less an illegal immigrant, but his parents had been accepted here as asylum seekers from a horrific genocide. And many will say, well, that's good. Britain should take people from horrific genocides. But there is a reality here that some of the people we're allowing in are very traumatized. They have had horrific backgrounds and they come from places where, as I think Mike Graham was saying yesterday, either on your show or on one of our other shows, where frankly, they've seen people chopping up bodies, they've seen people chopping hands off and shooting and maiming. And I'm not in the slightest saying that that's normal, but we are allowing people in with a whole set of problems and different backgrounds to our own. And my God, we're paying the price.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to stress this once again. When you can't take one case. Keir Starmer is basically saying if the public know what the charges against a defendant are, that could prejudice that defendant's trial. Think about that. If the public know what the charges are, that could prejudice the defendant's trial. That is arrant nonsense, and he knows it. He's a lawyer, so he isn't misunderstanding the law. He's a lawyer. He knows what the law is. So what he's actually doing to us is lying to us. He's a liar. He is lying to us. It's outrageous.
Well, he's a weak leader. He doesn't have the courage to tell it as it is. And I'm sure he looks back on the way all that was handled, and in his heart of hearts, he must know that he spectacularly screwed it up. Unless, of course, he's like his own colleagues in being utterly delusional. And I'm afraid sometimes I think that's what they are. You've got Rachel Reeves still talking about going for growth when the exact opposite is happening, and how she's going to fight with every fibre of her body for that, sounding as everything's okay just as the economy goes on the skids. These people are delusional. They don't get it, and they're too proud to admit when it all went wrong. And, I'm still reflecting on that speech that Keir Starmer gave yesterday, in which he vowed to do everything in his power to protect the children of this country. And yet he allows the boats to keep on coming. And yet he allows foreign criminals not to be deported. This isn't how any well-run, safe country operates.
He's hopeless. And while he goes on about the welfare of children being so important to him, I'll give him some credence. A full inquiry into Southport is probably called for. However, beware of what the parameters of that full inquiry are. I bet you there'll be parameters that will keep him relatively safe from too much inquiry, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
but he so cares about the welfare of young people that he's not having a full inquiry into the thousands and thousands of underage victims of the rape gangs. He's not having an inquiry for them. So, him caring about young people, it's intermittent. You never know whether he's on or off about it. Honestly, this man is a total disgrace and utterly useless. There's no doubt about it. I think perhaps John Kennedy, the governor of Louisiana, may be onto something. Maybe, it's the ketamine and it's the bong.